The cramping started during the client presentation. Not the dull ache I'd learned to associate with stress or bad posture from hunching over my design tablet for 12 hours straight. This was sharp, visceral, a twisting sensation low in my abdomen that made my breath catch mid-sentence as I walked the Pemberton executives through the rebrand mock-ups I'd spent 3 weeks perfecting. And as you can see here, the color palette transitioned from another cramp, harder this time. My hand trembled as I advanced the slide. From the corporate blue to the more approachable teal creates a sense of heat, sudden and overwhelming, crawling up my neck like fire ants under my skin. This wasn't stress. This wasn't nerves. This was impossible. I was on suppressants, medical grade, prescription strength suppressants that I'd been taking religiously for 6 years. I'd never missed a dose, never been late. My heat cycles were supposed to be completely suppressed until I chose otherwise. Except my body had apparently decided to override 6 years of pharmaceutical intervention right here, right now, in Conference Room B of Skyline Digital with 4 executives staring at me expectantly. "Mr. Cole, are you all right?" I realized I'd stopped talking. The Pemberton CFO was looking at me with concern that was rapidly shifting toward suspicion, and I could smell it starting my scent, usually locked down to barely perceptible, beginning to bloom out of me in waves of jasmine and warm vanilla. My voice came out rough. "I'm sorry. I need to excuse me for just a moment." I made it to the hallway before the next wave hit. My legs nearly gave out, and I had to brace myself against the wall, my laptop bag sliding off my shoulder and hitting the floor with a crack that probably meant a broken screen. I didn't care about the laptop. I cared about the fact that I was going into heat, my first real heat in 6 years, in the middle of a workday in a building full of alphas and betas and people who would absolutely notice an unmated omega losing control. My phone. I needed my phone. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unzip my bag. The fluorescent lights overhead felt like they were burning directly into my retinas, and every sound was too loud, too sharp, too much. I found my phone, pulled it out, and stared at the screen while my vision blurred at the edges. Who could I call? My parents were in Portland. My roommate was beta and wouldn't understand the biology of this. My doctor's office was 40 minutes away, and I didn't have 40 minutes. I had maybe 20 minutes before rational thought became impossible, before my body completely overrode my brain, and I became nothing but need and heat and desperation. My fingers moved on instinct, pulling up a contact I'd saved 3 weeks ago after a meeting that had changed everything, even though I'd convinced myself it meant nothing. Valenti Brothers, emergency only. 3 weeks ago, the pitch meeting for a startup that wanted to revolutionize sustainable packaging. I'd been hired as the freelance designer to make their vision look professional enough to attract serious investment. The Valenti brothers were the serious investment. Dante, Luca, and Marco Valenti, triplet alphas who'd built a venture capital empire by the time they were 30. I'd done my research before the meeting. Everyone in Seattle's business community knew them. Brilliant, ruthless, selective about their investments, and absolutely terrifying in the way that people with that much power and money always were. I'd walked into that conference room expecting 3 copies of every entitled alpha I'd ever met, cold, dismissive, the type who'd look through me rather than at me. Instead, I'd found 3 men who listened to every word of my presentation like it mattered, who asked questions about design theory that showed they'd actually read my portfolio, who looked at me with an intensity that made my suppressant-dulled instincts stir for the first time in years. At the end of the meeting, Dante, the eldest, the one who did most of the talking, had handed me a business card. "This has our personal number," he'd said. "Not the office line. If you ever need anything at all, call us." The way he'd said anything times, had felt significant, like he was offering more than just business contact information. But I'd convinced myself I was imagining it, that 3 gorgeous, wealthy alphas weren't actually interested in a freelance designer who could barely make rent. That the way Marco had smiled at me and the way Luca's eyes had tracked my every movement was just professional courtesy. I'd saved the number and told myself I'd never use it. Now, standing in a hallway with heat tearing through my body and my scent blooming out of me like a beacon, I pressed call. It rang once. "Jasper." Dante's voice. He'd answered before the second ring. And he'd known it was me without needing to ask. The words caught in my throat. Shame and need and terror, all fighting for space. I need help. I don't know what's happening, but my suppressants failed and I'm at work and I can't think clearly and I don't know who else to call. Where are you? His voice changed, became sharp and focused and absolutely commanding. Exact location. Skyline Digital, downtown, 11th floor, east hallway by conference room B. We're 10 minutes away. Do not move. Do not let anyone near you. Lock yourself somewhere private if you can. We're coming. The line didn't go dead. I could still hear him, hear movement, hear other voices in the background. Luca, bring the car around. Marco, call ahead to the building. We need security to clear that floor. Now. Dante, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have called. This is too much. Jasper, the command in his voice cut through my panic like a blade. You did exactly the right thing. We've been waiting for you to call. Now find somewhere safe and hold on. 10 minutes. The call ended. I stared at my phone, trying to process what he'd said. Day, we've been waiting for you to call. Before I could spiral into analyzing that statement, another cramp hit worse than the ones before, sharp enough that I actually whimpered. The sound echoed in the empty hallway, and I heard footsteps approaching from around the corner. I needed to move. The bathroom. There was a single occupancy bathroom at the end of the hall, the kind with a lock on the inside. I grabbed my bag and stumbled toward it, my legs unsteady, my whole body feeling like it was burning from the inside out. Made it through the door, turned the lock, and slid down to the cold tile floor with my back against the wall. My scent was so strong now I could taste it in the air, sweet and desperate and unmistakably Omega. Anyone who walked past this door would know exactly what was happening. I pulled my knees to my chest and tried to breathe through the waves of heat. 6 years. I'd gone 6 years without a heat cycle. I'd convinced myself I had it under control, that I'd never have to deal with this again until I chose to, until I found someone I trusted enough to be vulnerable with. Instead, my body had made the choice for me in the worst possible location at the worst possible time. And I'd called 3 alphas I barely knew to come save me. The rational part of my brain that was still functioning pointed out how insane this was, how dangerous. I didn't know them, not really. One business meeting didn't mean they were safe. Didn't mean they wouldn't take advantage of an Omega in heat who'd literally invited them to come find him. But the rest of me, the part that had felt something shift during that meeting 3 weeks ago, the part that had remembered their scents, cedar and smoke for Dante, rain and earth for Luca, citrus and wood smoke for Marco, that part knew. Knew they'd come, knew they'd help, knew I'd be safe. I just had to hold on for 10 minutes. I counted every second. At 8 minutes, I heard voices in the hallway. Multiple people, concerned tones, someone asking about a smell and whether they should call security. At 9 minutes, the entire floor went silent. Not gradually, all at once. Like someone had hit a switch that turned off every conversation, every footstep, every sound except the buzzing fluorescent lights. Then I heard them. 3 sets of footsteps moving in perfect synchronization. Not hurried, measured, deliberate. The kind of footsteps that belonged to people who'd never had to rush because the world moved around them. Everyone off this floor. Now, Dante's voice, carrying the kind of authority that made disobedience impossible. Footsteps retreating, a door closing, silence. Then a knock on the bathroom door, gentle but firm. Jasper, it's us. Can you unlock the door? Luca's voice, calmer than Dante's but no less certain. I reached up with a hand that didn't feel like it belonged to me and turned the lock. The door opened, and there they were. Dante Valenti stood directly in front of me, 6'3" of perfectly tailored suit and dark hair and gray eyes that went soft the second they found me on the floor. Behind him, Luca and Marco filled the doorway, identical in build but different in everything else that mattered. And the scent of them hit me like a physical force. Cedar and smoke and rain and earth and citrus and wood smoke, all blending together into something my Omega hindbrain immediately identified as times, safe times, and times, home times, and times mine. Oh, sweetheart. Marco dropped to his knees beside me first, his hand coming up to cup my face with devastating gentleness. You're burning up. We need to get him out of here, Luca said, already moving. The building's secure, but we shouldn't stay. Can you walk? Dante asked me. I tried to answer. Couldn't. The heat had swallowed my words. That's a no. Marco looked up at his brothers. Dante, you carry him. Luca and I will clear the path. Before I could process what was happening, Dante had scooped me up like I weighed nothing. One arm under my knees, one behind my back, pulling me against his chest where I could feel his heartbeat and smell cedar and smoke so strongly my eyes nearly rolled back. I've got you, he murmured against my hair. You're safe now. The last thing I remember before the heat haze swallowed me completely was the feeling of being carried through empty hallways while 3 alphas surrounded me like a protective barrier between me and the entire world. Then, everything went dark. I woke up in a bed that wasn't mine. That was my first thought. This bed was too large, too soft, sheets too expensive to be anything from my apartment where I'd been sleeping on a mattress I'd found on Craigslist 3 years ago. My second thought was that I was wearing clothes I didn't recognize. Soft cotton pants and a t-shirt that hung to mid-thigh, both carrying a scent that made my chest hum with contentment even though I couldn't place why. My third thought was that I wasn't in heat anymore. The fever had broken, the cramping had stopped. My head was clear enough to think in complete sentences, which felt like a miracle after however long I'd been unconscious. I sat up slowly, taking stock of my body, sore, exhausted, but stable. The room I was in looked like something from an interior design magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows showing the Seattle skyline at night, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than my entire year's rent, art on the walls that I suspected was original. You're awake. I turned my head to find Luca sitting in an armchair by the window. He'd changed out of his suit into dark jeans and a sweater, his dark hair slightly mussed like he'd been running his hands through it. How long was I out? My voice came out rough. 18 hours. The worst of it passed while you were unconscious. The doctor said that was normal for a Virgin Omega experiencing their first true heat. He stood, moving closer, but stopping a careful distance from the bed. How do you feel? Like I got hit by a truck. I paused. You had a doctor come here? Dr. Chen. She's an Omega specialist, completely discreet. She confirmed your suppressant's failed manufacturing defect in the batch. She left emergency doses to stabilize you and a prescription for a different brand. I stared at him. Where am I? Our apartment, downtown. You're in the guest suite. Luca gestured to the room. You've been here the entire time. We took shifts staying with you to monitor your condition. All 3 of you? Of course all 3 of us. He said it like it was obvious. Did you think we'd leave you alone? The memory of the bathroom floor came rushing back. The phone call. Dante's voice saying times we've been waiting for you to call. I don't understand, I said quietly. Why did you come? I mean, I called, but you didn't have to. You barely know me. Luca's expression shifted into something complicated. Can I sit? I nodded. He settled on the edge of the bed, careful not to crowd me. 3 weeks ago, you walked into a conference room to pitch a sustainable packaging design. Do you remember what you were wearing? The question caught me off guard. Navy button-down, black pants. Nothing special. You had paint under your fingernails. Green paint. You apologized for it, said you'd been working on a personal project the night before and forgot to clean up properly. His eyes found mine. You smelled like jasmine and vanilla, even through suppressants strong enough that most people wouldn't have caught it. But we're not most people. My breath caught. We knew what you were the second you walked into that room, Luca continued. We knew you were Omega. We knew you were unmated. We knew you were suppressing so heavily you probably hadn't had a real heat in years. He paused. And we knew, all 3 of us simultaneously, that you were ours. The room felt too small suddenly, too warm. That's not possible. Fated mates aren't that's not real, that's stories. It's rare, Luca agreed. Especially for triplet alphas to all recognize the same Omega. But it happens. It happened to us. His hand flexed like he wanted to reach for me but was stopping himself. We gave you our number because we couldn't just let you walk away. But we couldn't pursue you either. Not when you were clearly not ready. So we waited, hoped you'd call when you needed us. You were waiting for me to have a medical emergency? We were waiting for you to trust us enough to reach out. He smiled slightly. The medical emergency was unfortunate, but it brought you to us, so I can't regret it entirely. I should have been terrified, should have been running. This was the setup for every horror story about alphas and omegas, the powerful, the vulnerable, the claim that fate had decided everything. But looking at Luca, Seeing the careful distance he maintained, even though I could scent his alpha instincts pulling him toward me, I wasn't afraid. "Where are your brothers?" I asked. "Dante's on a conference call with Tokyo. Marco's making dinner," he insisted. "Said you'd need to eat when you woke up." Luca stood. "I'll let them know you're awake. Take your time. There's a bathroom through that door, clothes in the closet that should fit. No pressure to come out until you're ready." He was almost to the door when I said, "Luca?" He turned back. "Thank you for coming, for helping, for not—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "We will never hurt you," he said quietly. "That's a promise from all three of us." Then he left, closing the door with a soft click. I sat in the expensive bed in the expensive room and tried to process what he'd told me. Fated mates, all three of them, recognized me 3 weeks ago and had been waiting ever since. It should have felt like a trap, should have felt like too much, too fast. Instead, it felt like something clicking into place. I found the bathroom marble and glass, and a shower that could fit 4 people, and cleaned up. Found clothes in the closet exactly as Luca had said. Soft joggers, a hoodie, everything in my size. My size. They'd gotten clothes in my size. When I finally worked up the courage to leave the room, I followed the scent of cooking food down a hallway into the most beautiful kitchen I'd ever seen. Marco was at the stove, stirring something that smelled incredible. He looked up when I entered, and his entire face transformed with a smile that made my chest ache. "Jasper, you're up." He set down the spoon and crossed to me, stopping just short of touching. "How are you feeling? Do you need anything? Water? Food? Are you warm enough?" The doctor said to watch for residual chills. "Marco, breathe." Dante's voice came from behind me. I turned to find him leaning against the door frame, still in his suit from earlier, though his tie was loosened and his sleeves were rolled up. "Sorry," Marco said sheepishly. "I'm excited you're okay. I made soup and bread, and there's a salad if you want vegetables. Or I can make something else if you don't like soup." "Soup sounds perfect," I said, and meant it. Marco beamed and went back to the stove. Dante moved to my side, close enough that I could feel his warmth. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. "Really?" "I think so. Still processing." I looked up at him. "Luca told me about what you knew, about why you gave me your number. And? And I don't know what to do with that information." Dante's hand came up, hovering near my face but not quite touching. "Can I?" I nodded. His palm settled against my cheek, warm and solid, and the contact sent a shiver through me that had nothing to do with temperature. "You don't have to do anything with it yet," he said. "You just went through a medical crisis. Your body needs time to recover. Your mind needs time to process. We're not going anywhere. Take all the time you need." "What if I'm not what you think I am?" The words came out smaller than I meant them to. What if the fated mate thing is wrong? What if I'm just some omega who happened to smell right, and when you actually get to know me, you realize I'm not? "Stop." The command in his voice was gentle but absolute. "Jasper, we've been watching you for 3 weeks. Not in a creepy way," he added quickly. "But we followed your work, your portfolio, the designs you post online. We know you stay up until 3 a.m. working on personal projects. We know you volunteer at the youth center teaching kids digital art. We know you eat lunch at the same food truck every Thursday because you're loyal to small businesses. We know you." "That's stalking," I pointed out. "It's research." Marco appeared with a bowl of soup, grinning. "There's a difference." Despite everything, I laughed. We ate dinner together at their massive dining table, and it felt surreal. 3 impossibly handsome alphas who supposedly recognized me as their fated mate, treating me like I was something precious instead of an omega who'd caused a scene at his workplace and crashed their lives. Marco told stories that made me laugh until my sides hurt. Luca asked careful questions about my work that showed he'd actually looked at my portfolio. Dante watched me with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable, but instead felt like being seen for the first time in years. "Can I ask you something?" I said when the meal was winding down. "Why didn't you pursue me? I mean, if you really knew 3 weeks ago, why wait?" The 3 of them exchanged glances. "Because you were running," Dante said finally. "We could scent it on you. Fear, old fear, buried deep. Someone hurt you before we met you. An alpha, probably. We weren't going to be just another alpha pushing past your boundaries." He was right. They were absolutely right. 2 years ago, I'd dated an alpha named Connor. It had lasted 6 months before I'd realized he wasn't interested in me as a person, he was interested in me as an omega, as something to control and claim and show off. When I'd ended it, he'd told me I'd never find anyone better. That omegas, like me, too independent, too career-focused, too unwilling to submit properly, would end up alone. I'd believed him, had thrown myself into suppressants and work and building a life where I didn't need anyone. And now these 3 alphas were sitting here telling me they'd recognized me as their mate and had waited patiently for me to feel safe enough to reach out. I'm scared, I admitted, of this, of you, of what it means. That's okay, Marco said gently. We're a little scared, too. I looked at him in surprise. You're scared? Of what? That we'll mess this up, that we'll push too hard or not hard enough, that you'll decide we're not worth the risk. His smile was soft. You're not the only one who's vulnerable here, Jasper. Something in my chest loosened at that. Can I stay tonight? The question surprised me as much as it probably surprised them. Not, I don't mean anything by it. I just don't want to be alone. And my apartment is 40 minutes away and I'm exhausted and… Yes, all 3 of them said in unison. I ended up in the guest room again, but this time when Marco asked if I wanted company, I said yes. He settled in the armchair by the window with a book, giving me space but staying close enough that I could feel his presence. Marco? Yeah? Thank you for coming to get me. He looked up from his book, and the expression on his face was so tender it made my throat tight. Always, he said. For anything. You call, we come. That's how this works. I fell asleep feeling safer than I had in years. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and found Luca in the kitchen making breakfast. You cook too? I asked, settling onto a bar stool. We all do. Dante's better at it, but he has an early meeting. Luca set a plate of eggs and toast in front of me. How did you sleep? Better than I have in months. I picked up my fork. Can I ask you something personal? Anything. How does this work? The 3 of you and 1 omega. I mean, logistically, emotionally. How does anyone navigate that? Luca leaned against the counter considering. Honestly, we don't know. We've never done this before. Never met our fated mate until you. But here's what we do know. We're not competing for you. We're not 3 separate relationships. We're a pack. What one of us feels, we all feel. What one of us wants for you, we all want. That sounds complicated. It probably will be sometimes. But we're willing to figure it out if you are. I ate my breakfast and thought about what that meant. 3 alphas, 1 omega. A pack bond that defied everything I'd been taught about how relationships worked. It should have felt overwhelming. Instead, it felt like possibility. I stayed for 3 days. Not because I had to. Luca had arranged for someone to bring clothes from my apartment, and Dante had personally called my boss to explain I'd had a medical emergency. I stayed because every time I thought about leaving, one of them would do something that made staying feel inevitable. Dante taught me to make proper risotto on the second night, his hands guiding mine as we stirred, his patience infinite when I messed up the timing. Marco took me to his art studio, an entire room in their apartment dedicated to painting, and showed me works in progress he said he'd never shown anyone else. Luca sat with me through a panic attack on the 3rd morning when the reality of what had happened crashed over me all at once. Didn't try to fix it. Just held my hand and breathed with me until I could breathe on my own again. On the 3rd evening, I was standing on their balcony, watching the city lights when Dante found me. You're thinking about leaving, he said. It wasn't a question. I have a life, a job, an apartment. I can't just move in with 3 alphas I've known for less than a month. Known for 3 weeks, he corrected. Known biblically for 3 days. At my startled look, he smiled. I'm joking. Mostly. I turned to face him. I'm serious, Dante. This is moving too fast. I need time to think. Then take time. Go home. Process everything. We'll still be here. He stepped closer. But Jasper, I need you to know something. This isn't going away. What you felt during your heat, that wasn't just biology. We're bonded now. Pack bonded. That's permanent. My breath caught. What? The doctor confirmed it. When all 3 of us helped you through the heat, when our scents mixed with yours, when you accepted our care bonds formed, we're connected now. You're saying I'm stuck with you? I'm saying we belong to each other, whether we're in the same room or on opposite sides of the world, whether you decide to build a life with us or keep us at arm's length. The bonds exist. He cupped my face in both hands. I know it's terrifying, but it's also the most right thing I've ever felt in my life. I should have been angry, should have felt trapped. Instead, I felt the bonds he was talking about, could feel them humming under my skin, like invisible threads connecting me to all three of them. What if I can't do this? I whispered. What if I'm not strong enough to be what you need? You're already everything we need. You just have to decide if we're what you need, too. That night, they called me a car to take me home. Marco hugged me at the door, tight and desperate. Text us when you get home safe. Luca pressed a kiss to my forehead. Take all the time you need. We'll be waiting. Dante held me last, his arms around me like he could hold all my broken pieces together through sheer force of will. We love you, he said against my hair. I know it's too soon to say that. I know it probably scares you, but I'm saying it anyway because you need to know. We love you, Jasper Cole, and nothing you do or don't do will change that. I left without saying it back. My apartment felt empty after 3 days in their space. Too quiet, too cold, too much evidence of a life I'd built around not needing anyone. I lasted 2 days before I texted Dante. Can we talk? He called immediately. I'm listening. I don't know how to do this. The pack bond thing, the three of you. I don't have a roadmap for this. Neither do we. His voice was steady. But we can figure it out together. What if I mess it up? What if I hurt one of you? What if I can't love you all equally? Jasper. He was quiet for a moment. Love isn't a finite resource. You don't have to divide it. And you can't mess this up by being honest about what you need. I need time. I need to keep my job, and my apartment, and my independence. I need to know that choosing you doesn't mean losing myself. Then that's what we'll give you. Your timeline, your boundaries, your terms. Even if my terms are slow, even if it takes months before I'm ready for more, even if it takes years, we're not going anywhere. I believed him. We started dating. That's the only word I had for it, even though dating felt inadequate for a pack bond with 3 alphas who already knew they wanted forever. Our first official date was with Dante. He took me to the Seattle Art Museum on a Wednesday afternoon when it was nearly empty, and we wandered through galleries for 3 hours. What do you think of this one? He asked, stopping in front of a massive abstract piece that was mostly red and black slashes across white canvas. Honestly, it looks like someone had a temper tantrum with expensive paint. He laughed, really laughed, head thrown back, the sound echoing through the quiet gallery. The artist would hate you. It sold for $2 million. Then they're laughing all the way to the bank, while people like you overthink angry paint slashes. People like me? He raised an eyebrow. Rich people who think expensive automatically means meaningful. Instead of being offended, he looked delighted. You're right. I do that. Thank you for calling me on it. That's when I realized Dante didn't want someone who agreed with him. He wanted someone who challenged him. Someone who saw through the CEO mask to the person underneath. We ended the date at a food truck. His idea, not mine. Best Korean tacos in the city, he said, ordering for both of us. I come here every Thursday. You? You eat from a food truck? You thought I only ate at places with Michelin stars? He handed me a taco. I grew up working in my uncle's restaurant. I know good food when I taste it, and it has nothing to do with price point. The taco was incredible, and watching Dante Valenti, billionaire CEO, eat street food while sitting on a park bench in his $1,000 suit was one of the most endearing things I'd ever seen. Thank you for today, I said when he drove me home. Thank you for being yourself. Not who you think I want you to be, just you. At my apartment door, he kissed me, soft and careful and full of promise. Sleep well, Jasper. I didn't sleep. I lay awake thinking about cedar and smoke and the way his eyes had softened when I'd insulted overpriced art. My second date was with Marco 2 days later. He picked me up at noon with a picnic basket and a mischievous smile. Where are we going? You'll see. He drove us to Discovery Park, found a secluded spot overlooking the water, and spread out a blanket with professional efficiency. Did you make all this? I asked, staring at the spread. Sandwiches, fruit, cheese, chocolate. With my own 2 hands. He looked so proud. I wanted to show off. We ate and talked about art, his passion for painting, my love of design, the way creativity felt like breathing sometimes. Can I ask you something personal? Marco said, lying back on the blanket to stare at the sky. Go ahead. Why were you on suppressants for 6 years? That's a long time to shut down your biology completely. I was quiet for a moment, because I didn't trust myself to choose well. My first serious relationship was with an alpha who loved the idea of me more than the reality. When it ended, I decided it was safer to not give anyone that kind of access again. And then your suppressants failed. And then they failed. And I called 3 alphas I barely knew, and they came anyway. Marco rolled onto his side to look at me. We came because we'd been waiting for you to need us. We came because the idea of you scared and alone was unbearable. We came because you're ours, Jasper. You were ours the second we scented you. That's a lot of pressure. It's not pressure, it's certainty. His hand found mine. You don't have to believe it yet, but we do, and we'll keep showing you until you believe it too. He kissed me as the sun set over the water, and I tasted certainty and patience and something that might have been love. Luca's date was different. He took me to a library. Not the public library. A private collection owned by a book dealer he knew, filled with rare first editions and manuscripts that made my design-loving heart sing. How did you know I'd love this? I asked, running my fingers over a leather-bound copy of a book I'd only seen in digital form. Because you told me. 4 months ago. You messaged about finding a first edition of your favorite book at a used bookstore but not being able to afford it. I remembered. He remembered. Of course he did. We spent hours there, Luca showing me treasures and telling me their histories. His knowledge was encyclopedic, his passion infectious. Why books? I asked. You're a venture capitalist. You could collect anything. Books hold stories, and stories are what make us human. He pulled down a worn paperback, clearly beloved despite its condition. This was my mother's. She read it to us every night when we were children. The pages are falling apart, but I can't bring myself to replace it because her fingerprints are still on these pages. The vulnerability in that admission made my chest ache. Thank you for showing me this, I said. Thank you for being someone I want to show it to. When he kissed me goodbye, it tasted like promises and patience and the weight of words unsaid but deeply felt. After 2 weeks of separate dates, they asked if I'd have dinner with all 3 of them. Is that weird? I asked. The 4 of us together? It's what we are, Dante said simply. A pack. You don't have to choose between us, you get all 3. Dinner was at their apartment. They cooked together with the kind of synchronized efficiency that came from years of practice, moving around the kitchen like a dance they'd perfected. I sat at the counter and watched them work, and something clicked into place. This wasn't 3 separate relationships, this was one relationship with 3 faces. And I was beginning to understand the difference. Can I ask you something? I said when we were eating. How do you make this work? The 3 of you sharing everything? They exchanged glances. We've been doing this our whole lives, Marco said. We're triplets. We've never known anything else. But you're also individuals, with different wants and needs. How do you negotiate that with an omega? By communicating, Luca said. If I need alone time with you, I tell them. If Dante wants to plan something special, he coordinates. We don't compete, we complement. And if you disagree about what I need or what's best for me, then we talk it through until we find common ground. Dante added. You're not a prize to be won, Jasper. You're our partner, all of ours. What's good for you is good for the pack. I wanted to believe it was that simple. But the bond kept pulling. I'd be working on a design at 2 a.m. and suddenly feel Dante's presence, not physically, but through the bond. A warm pressure against my consciousness that felt like someone checking to make sure I was okay. I'd be grocery shopping and Marco's joy would flood through me for no reason, making me smile in the produce aisle like an idiot. I'd be falling asleep and Luca's contentment would wrap around me like a weighted blanket. The bonds were always there, constant, undeniable. But they were also terrifying. Because caring this much about 3 people meant 3 times the ways to get hurt. 1 month into dating, I had a panic attack. It was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday and I woke up from a nightmare about Connor, my ex, except in the dream it wasn't Connor. It was Dante and Marco and Luca, all looking at me with that same disappointed expression Connor used to wear. when I didn't behave the way he expected. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel my heart racing and my chest tightening and the absolute certainty that I'd made a terrible mistake. Before I could talk myself out of it, I called Luca. Jasper? His voice was alert immediately. What's wrong? I can't breathe. I can't do this. Where are you? My apartment. We're coming. Stay on the phone with me. I heard movement, heard Dante's voice in the background, heard Luca giving instructions. I'm sorry, I gasped. I'm sorry, this is ridiculous. I'm fine. You're not fine, and that's okay. Just keep breathing. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. Can you do that with me? I tried. Failed. Tried again. That's it. Good. Again. By the time they arrived, all 3 of them, because of course all 3 of them came, I could breathe again. But I was still shaking. Dante pulled me into his arms without a word. Marco made tea. Luca sat beside me and kept up the breathing exercises until my heart rate returned to normal. I'm sorry, I said when I could speak. This is too much. 3 of you is too much, and I don't know how to do this, and I'm terrified I'm going to disappoint you. Stop. Dante's voice was firm but gentle. You're not disappointing us. You're being honest about struggling. That's what we want. You want me to have panic attacks at 3 a.m.? We want you to call us when you're struggling, instead of suffering alone. Marco set a mug of tea in front of me. That's what pack means. We carry the hard things together. But what if I can't carry your hard things? What if I'm not strong enough? You are, Luca said quietly. But even if you weren't, we'd still choose you. Strength isn't a requirement for love. They stayed until sunrise, held me when I needed it, gave me space when I asked, and when they finally left, they made me promise to call if I needed anything at all. I kept that promise, and slowly, over weeks and months, the panic attacks became less frequent, because I was learning to trust that they meant what they said. The bonds were always there, constant, undeniable, and increasingly comforting. 3 months after my heat, Marco asked me to move in. We were at their apartment. I'd started spending weekends there, and he just said it casually while we were making dinner. You should move in. Your lease is up next month anyway. Why pay rent when you're here most of the time? I stared at him. That's a huge step. It's a practical step, Luca pointed out from where he was chopping vegetables. You keep clothes here. You have a studio space here that Marco set up. Your toothbrush is in our bathroom. 3 toothbrushes, Dante added. You have 1 in each bathroom. That's basically living here already. I wanted to argue, wanted to point out all the reasons moving in after 3 months was too fast. But I couldn't, because they were right. I was already living there in everything but name. What about my independence? I asked quietly. What about it? Dante set down his wine glass and came to stand in front of me. Moving in doesn't mean giving up your life. You keep your job, your freelance work, your volunteer work, your friends. Moving in just means you come home to us at the end of the day instead of to an empty apartment. And if it doesn't work, if we realize we're not compatible living together, then we'll figure it out. Marco's hand found my shoulder. But Jasper, we're pack bonded. We're already compatible in every way that matters. Living together is just making the logistics easier. I moved in on a Saturday in June. My apartment had been tiny, so I didn't have much. But what I did have, they made space for. My art supplies spread across Marco's studio, my books integrated into Luca's shelves, my cooking equipment mixing with Dante's in the kitchen. The first night, I stood in what was now Times Our Times bedroom, the massive primary suite with the view of the city, and tried to process that this was real. Having second thoughts? Luca asked from the doorway. Third and fourth thoughts, I admitted. This is crazy, right? Moving in with 3 alphas I've known for 4 months? Completely insane, he crossed to me, pulling me against his chest. But it also feels inevitable, doesn't it? It did. That was the terrifying part. Living with them was an adjustment. But not in the ways I expected. I expected to feel crowded. Instead, I felt supported. They learned my rhythms, my needs for alone time, my tendency to hide when I was overwhelmed. I expected conflict. Instead, I found compromise. When we disagreed about everything from grocery shopping to how to load the dishwasher, we talked through it like adults. I expected to lose myself. Instead, I found more of myself. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to be small enough to fit into someone else's expectations. They celebrated every part of me, the messy, creative, sometimes difficult parts included. 6 months after moving in, Dante's father requested a meeting. He knows about you, Dante told me over breakfast. He's concerned. Concerned about what? About us bonding with someone he hasn't vetted. The Valenti family has expectations about pack formation. We've ignored most of them. Should I be worried? The three of them exchanged glances. Our father is old-fashioned, Marco said carefully. He believes Omegas should be chosen for their family connections, not for personal compatibility. He's going to hate me, I said flatly. He's going to try to, Luca corrected, but we're not giving him that option. The meeting was at the Valenti family estate in Bellevue. I wore my nicest suit, one of the ones Dante had insisted on buying me, and tried not to throw up in the car. Antonio Valenti was exactly what I expected. Silver-haired, sharp-eyed, the kind of alpha whose presence demanded submission from everyone in the room. Everyone except his sons. So you're the Omega my boys bonded with? He said, looking me up and down like merchandise. Unexpected. Father. Dante's voice held a warning. I'm simply observing. No family connections, no trust fund, a graphic designer. He said my profession like it was an insult. Not what I would have chosen. Good thing it wasn't your choice, Marco said pleasantly. Antonio's eyes narrowed. This bond was impulsive. A biological accident during a heat. That's not the foundation for a pack. You're wrong, I surprised myself by speaking. It wasn't impulsive. Your sons gave me their number 3 weeks before my heat. They waited for me to reach out. They helped me through a medical emergency. They've spent 6 months proving that I matter to them. That's not an accident. That's a choice they made every single day. The room went quiet. Antonio stared at me. You have a spine. That's something. He has more than something, Dante said. He has our complete loyalty, our love, our protection. And if you can't accept that, then we'll leave, and you'll never see us or the grandchildren we eventually have. The threat landed like a bomb. Antonio's face went through several expressions before settling on resignation. You'd choose him over your family? Yes, all three of them said in unison. Something shifted in Antonio's expression. Not acceptance, but acknowledgement. Then I suppose I should get to know my future son-in-law. He gestured to the chair across from him. Sit, Jasper. Tell me about your work. It wasn't warm, but it was a start. The real trouble came 2 weeks later. I was leaving my office late on a Thursday when a car pulled up beside me. Black SUV, tinted windows, the kind of vehicle that screamed money and danger. The window rolled down. Jasper Cole? The man in the back seat was older, maybe 60, with cold eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. Who's asking? Robert Hendricks. I'm a business associate of the Valentis. I was hoping we could talk. Every instinct I had screamed danger. I'm busy. It won't take long, just a conversation about your relationship with Dante, Luca, and Marco. I stepped back from the car. I'm not interested. You should be. I'm offering you $5 million to break your bond with them. The number was so absurd I almost laughed. Excuse me? $5 million. Cash. Completely untraceable. All you have to do is leave Seattle and never contact them again. You're insane. I'm practical. Hendricks leaned forward. The Valenti brothers are about to make an investment decision worth billions. Their judgment is compromised by their attachment to you. I can't let that happen. So you're trying to buy me off? I'm offering you a way out of a situation you were never equipped to handle. You're a graphic designer, Mr. Cole. You have no business being in a pack with 3 alphas who control half the venture capital on the West Coast. The condescension in his voice made my teeth ache. No, I said flatly. No? He looked genuinely surprised. I'm not interested in your money, and I'm not leaving them, so you can take your $5 million and $10 million. I stared at him. $10 million, Mr. Cole. That's my final offer. Enough money that you'd never have to work again. You could do whatever you wanted. Travel. Start your own firm. Live anywhere in the world. All you have to do is walk away. For 1 second, one brief, shameful second, I considered it. Not because I wanted to leave them, but because $10 million was more money than I could conceptualize. Because I'd spent my entire adult life struggling to make rent and worrying about whether I could afford groceries. Then I thought about Dante teaching me to make risotto, Marco painting beside me in comfortable silence, Luca reading to me on Sunday mornings. I thought about the bonds humming under my skin, connecting me to three alphas who'd chosen me every single day. No, I said again. Not for 10 million. Not for 100 million. I'm not for sale. Hendrik's expression went cold. You're making a mistake. That's my right. The window rolled up. The car drove away. I stood on the sidewalk, shaking, and pulled out my phone. Someone just offered me $10 million to leave you. Dante called immediately. What? I told him everything. The car, Hendrix, the offer. Stay where you are. I'm sending security. Don't move. Don't go anywhere alone. Within 10 minutes, two men in suits appeared Valenti security. They escorted me to a car and drove me straight to the apartment where Dante, Luca, and Marco were waiting. Dante pulled me into his arms the second I walked through the door. Are you okay? I'm fine. Shaken, but fine. Hendrix, Lucas said, his voice tight with fury. I should have seen this coming. Who is he? I asked. Competitor. We're about to close a major deal that would put his company out of business. He's desperate. Dante's jaw was tight. But going after you crosses a line. What are you going to do? Destroy him, all three of them said in unison. I should have been frightened by the cold certainty in their voices. Instead, I felt protected. He said you're making an investment decision worth billions, that your judgment is compromised because of me. Our judgment has never been clearer, Marco said. And if Hendrix thinks we're vulnerable because we love you, he's about to learn exactly how wrong he is. They weren't lying. Within 48 hours, Hendrix's company was facing an SEC investigation for financial irregularities that the Valentis had apparently been documenting for months. His investors pulled out. His board forced him to resign. You ended his career in 2 days, I said to Dante. He threatened what's ours. There are consequences for that. I'm not a possession. No, your pack, which is infinitely more valuable than any possession. His hand cupped my face. When people go after our pack, we don't respond proportionally. We respond definitively. The Hendrix incident changed something in me, made me realize that being with them meant being in their world, a world where people saw me as leverage, as weakness, as something to exploit. I need to be stronger, I told Luca one night. If I'm going to be part of your lives, I can't be a liability. You're not a liability. I'm a graphic designer. I have no idea how to navigate corporate warfare or deal with people trying to buy me off. Then we'll teach you. He pulled me against him. But Jasper, you don't need to become someone else to fit into our world. You just need to be yourself and let us handle the rest. That's not fair to you. It's exactly fair. That's what pack means. We protect you. You ground us. Everyone contributes what they can. But I wanted to contribute more than just existing. So, I started learning. Reading about business, understanding the Valenti Empire, attending events with them, and watching how they navigated social politics. Dante was impressed. You're a natural at this. I'm terrified at this. Fear and competence aren't mutually exclusive. He kissed my temple. You're doing beautifully. 3 months after the Hendrix incident, I was at a charity gala with them when I overheard a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. Two investors in the bathroom, washing their hands, talking about the Valentis. Ever since they bonded with that Omega, they've been different. Softer. Softer means vulnerable. There's opportunity there, if we play it right. You thinking what I'm thinking? If we can separate him from them, even temporarily, show them that their attachment is a weakness. I walked out of the stall. Both men went pale. Gentlemen, I said pleasantly, I believe you were discussing my pack? Mr. Cole, we weren't. You absolutely were. And let me save you some time. Whatever you're planning, it won't work. Not because my mates will protect me, though they will. But because I'm not the weakness you think I am, I'm the reason they're stronger. I walked out before they could respond. Told Dante what I'd heard. Watched him handle it with the same cold efficiency he brought to all threats. By the end of the week, both investors had issued public apologies and withdrawn from several joint ventures with the Valentis. You're terrifying when you want to be, Marco said admiringly. I learned from the best. Being with them meant learning to be harder, but it also meant learning to be softer. Because in private, away from the corporate battles and social politics, They showed me parts of themselves that no one else saw. Dante's anxiety about being good enough. Marco's fear of losing the people he loved. Luca's struggle with emotional expression. They were vulnerable with me in ways they'd never been with anyone else. And I learned to be vulnerable back. Learned to tell them when I was struggling instead of pretending to be fine. Learned to ask for help instead of trying to handle everything alone. Learned that love wasn't about being perfect, it was about being honest. 1 year after my heat, they proposed. We were at the beach house they'd rented for a long weekend. I was walking along the shore at sunset when I heard music behind me. Turning around, I found all three of them standing there. Dante holding a small box, Marco with flowers, Luca with the most nervous expression I'd ever seen on his face. We had a whole speech planned, Dante said. Multiple drafts. Luca helped with the wording. But standing here looking at you, Marco continued, all I can think is that you're the best thing that's ever happened to us. And we want forever, Luca finished. Officially, publicly. We want the world to know you're ours. Dante opened the box. Inside were 3 rings, each different, each perfect. Will you marry us? They asked together. I said yes before they finished the question. The bonding ceremony was small, just family and close friends. I wore white because Marco had insisted it was traditional, and I wanted to give him that. When the officiant asked if I accepted the bond, if I chose these 3 alphas as my pack, my mates, my forever, I looked at each of them in turn. Dante, who'd dropped everything to save me. Marco, who'd taught me to paint and laugh and trust again. Luca, who'd held my hand through panic and fear and doubt. I do, I said, to all of it, forever. The claiming bites happened that night. 3 marks, 3 bonds, 3 alphas who'd somehow become my entire world. And I'd never been more certain of anything in my life. 2 years after we bonded, I woke up feeling strange. Not sick, just off, like my body was trying to tell me something my brain hadn't caught up to yet. I was in the kitchen making coffee when the smell of it hit me wrong, made my stomach turn in a way that had nothing to do with the quality of the beans. Jasper? Dante appeared in the doorway, concern immediate on his face. What's wrong? I don't know. The coffee smells weird. He came closer, and I watched his nostrils flare as he scented me, watched his eyes go wide. Oh, what? Marco, Luca, he called them without taking his eyes off me. Get in here, now! They appeared within seconds, and I watched the same realization cross both their faces. Are you sure? Luca asked Dante. Completely sure. Someone want to tell me what's happening? I demanded. Marco's hand settled on my stomach, gentle and reverent. You're pregnant. The words didn't compute at first. Then they did. Then I was sitting on the kitchen floor, while all 3 of them knelt around me, their scents mixing with mine in a way that my Omega instincts recognized as pack and safety and family. How? I managed. The usual way, Dante said, a smile playing at his lips. I mean all 3 of you? Is that possible? In pack bonds, yes, Luca confirmed. Genetic testing will tell us more, but right now, all that matters is that you're pregnant with our child, our pack's child. I looked at the 3 alphas who'd saved me on a bathroom floor, who'd waited patiently for me to trust them, who'd built a life with me brick by careful brick. We're having a baby, I whispered. We're having a baby, they confirmed. The pregnancy was different than I expected. Not difficult exactly, but strange. Because pack bonds meant I could feel all 3 of them responding to my condition. Dante became impossibly protective, hovering in ways that would have driven me crazy if they weren't so clearly driven by love. Marco turned into a research machine, reading every book on Omega pregnancy he could find and reporting statistics with the enthusiasm of a sports commentator. Luca went quiet and intense, his hand finding my stomach at odd moments like he was trying to convince himself this was real. I'm not made of glass, I told Dante when he tried to carry groceries for me at 12 weeks. I can lift a gallon of milk. I know, but let me do this. Let me help. You are helping, all of you, sometimes too much. But they couldn't help it. The bonds amplified everything. When I had morning sickness, all 3 of them looked vaguely nauseated. When I had cravings, they manifested them like wishes granted by genies. When I couldn't sleep, they took turns reading to me until I finally dozed off. At 20 weeks, we had the genetic testing done. Dr. Chen called with the results. Congratulations, it's a girl, and the genetic markers show contribution from all three fathers. All three? I asked, even though we'd suspected. All three. It's rare but well documented in pack bonds. Your daughter carries DNA from Dante, Luca, and Marco equally, a true pack child. We celebrated that night with sparkling cider and tears of joy. What should we name her? Marco asked, his hand on my growing belly. Something that means hope, I said, because that's what she is. Hope that we can build something beautiful together. Aria, Luca suggested. It means air, song, but also hope in some contexts. We all agreed immediately. Aria Valenti Cole. The pregnancy progressed smoothly until 32 weeks, when I went into early labor. I was at work when the contractions started, not the false ones I'd been having for weeks, real ones that made me grab the edge of my desk and try to breathe through the pain. I called Dante. It's too early, I gasped. She's not supposed to come yet. We're coming. Call your doctor. Stay calm. They arrived in 8 minutes faster than should have been physically possible. Found me in my office, pacing and trying not to panic. Breathe, Marco said, his hands on my shoulders. Just breathe. We've got you. The hospital confirmed what I knew. Early labor. They managed to stop it with medications and bed rest orders, but the scare left all of us shaken. What if something goes wrong? I asked that night in the hospital, hooked up to monitors that tracked the baby's heartbeat. Nothing's going to go wrong, Dante said firmly. You're both going to be fine. You can't know that. Yes, I can, because we won't allow anything else. It was arrogant and ridiculous and exactly what I needed to hear. Aria was born at 38 weeks, healthy, perfect, screaming her displeasure at being evicted from her warm home. When they placed her in my arms for the first time, I understood what everyone meant when they talked about instant, overwhelming love. She was tiny, red-faced, furious at the world, and absolutely perfect. She has your eyes, Marco said, tears streaming down his face. And your stubbornness, Luca added, gently touching her tiny hand. She's going to be terrifying, Dante said, but his voice was thick with emotion. Our perfect, terrifying daughter. The genetic testing results came back confirming what we already knew in our hearts. Aria carried markers from all three of them. The doctors said it was the most balanced three-way genetic contribution they'd ever documented. She's a miracle, Dr. Chen said, in every sense of the word. Those first weeks with Aria were chaos. Beautiful, exhausting chaos. They took turns with night feedings, with diaper changes, with the endless needs of a newborn, and I watched them transform from venture capitalists and corporate titans into fathers who would cheerfully wear spit-up stained shirts to important meetings because their daughter had decided his shoulder was the perfect place to burp. I thought I knew what love was. Dante said one night at 3 a.m. while walking a fussy Aria around the living room. But this is different. This is terrifying. I would burn the world down to keep her safe. Welcome to parenthood, I said from the couch where I was too exhausted to move, where you suddenly understand why parents in movies make terrible decisions to save their kids. He laughed softly. Exactly that. When Aria was 3 months old, we had a naming ceremony. Not a baptism, none of us were particularly religious, but a gathering of family and friends to formally introduce our daughter to the pack. Antonio Valenti held his granddaughter with the same reverence he'd shown exactly once before when each of his sons were born. She has the Valenti eyes, he said, his voice gruff. And her father's stubbornness. Fathers, plural, I corrected. All three of them. He looked at me, and something in his expression had softened over the past 2 years. Yes, all three of them. You've done well, Jasper, with my sons and with this child. Coming from Antonio, it was practically a declaration of love. Aria's first year was a blur of milestones and sleepless nights and moments of pure joy. Her first smile was for Luca, who'd been reading to her in his study. He'd run into our bedroom at 6 a.m. yelling, "She smiled! She smiled at me!" with the enthusiasm of someone who'd just discovered gold. Her first laugh was for Marco, who'd been making increasingly ridiculous faces while changing her diaper. Her first word was "Dada," which caused a 3-hour debate about which one of them she meant. We eventually decided she meant all of them. She took her first steps at 11 months, launching herself from Dante's arms toward mine with the fearless abandon of someone who knew she'd be caught. And she was, always, by three fathers who would move mountains to keep her safe. On her first birthday, we had a small party, just family, Antonio and his partner, Marcus, and a few close friends. Aria sat in her high chair with frosting smeared across her face, laughing as we sang Happy Birthday with varying degrees of pitch accuracy. "Look at her," Marco said, taking pictures with the dedication of a professional photographer. "Our perfect girl." "Our miracle," Luca corrected. "Our daughter," Dante finished. That night, after everyone had left and Aria was finally asleep in her crib, the four of us collapsed on the couch. "We did it," I said. "One whole year of keeping a tiny human alive. Only 17 more years until college," Marco groaned. "Don't," Luca warned. "I can't think about her growing up yet." "She's going to be brilliant," Dante said. "And terrifying, and absolutely unstoppable. Like her father," I said. "Fathers," all three of them corrected in unison. I smiled, like her fathers. 2 years after Aria's birth, we were planning her second birthday party when I started feeling familiar symptoms. The coffee aversion, the exhaustion, the strange sensitivity to smells. "Jasper?" Dante's voice was careful. "Are you pregnant again?" I stared at him. "I don't know. Maybe. I wasn't trying to be." "Neither were we," Marco pointed out. "But Aria wasn't exactly planned either." The test was positive. So was the next one, and the ultrasound confirmed it 8 weeks along. "Another miracle," Dr. Chen said. "Your body seems very efficient at pack bonding conception." "That's one way to put it," I muttered. The second pregnancy was easier in some ways. We knew what to expect, had a system, were less terrified of every symptom. But it was harder in others, because we had a 2-year-old who didn't understand why Papa couldn't pick her up anymore. "Baby," Aria would say, pointing at my growing stomach with toddler wisdom. "Yes, baby, you're going to be a big sister." "No," very firm, my Papa. Explaining sibling rivalry to a 2-year-old turned out to be impossible, so we just loved her through it. This baby was a boy, Ezra. Born at 39 weeks, healthy and perfect, and significantly calmer than his sister had been. Watching Aria meet her baby brother for the first time made me cry. She'd been skeptical for months, but the second she saw him, her entire face softened. "Baby," she whispered, touching his tiny hand with devastating gentleness. "My baby." "Our baby," Luca corrected. "Our whole family's baby." Aria considered this, then nodded. "My baby brother." Close enough. 5 years after that desperate phone call in an office bathroom, I sat on the balcony of our home watching the sunset over Seattle. Aria was 5 now, precocious and brilliant and absolutely fearless. She'd started kindergarten and announced on her first day that she had 3 dads and they're all the best. Ezra was 3, quieter than his sister but no less determined. He loved books like Luca, art like Marco, and had Dante's strategic mind already planning his moves on the chessboard. Our family wasn't traditional. It wasn't what I'd imagined when I was younger and dreaming about my future. It was better. Because I'd learned that family isn't about fitting into predetermined shapes. It's about building something together that works for everyone involved. "What are you thinking about?" Dante asked, settling beside me with 2 glasses of wine. "How far we've come, from that bathroom floor to this. Any regrets?" I looked at him, at the man who dropped everything to save me, who'd built a life with me and 2 other alphas who I loved just as much. Not a single one. He kissed me softly. "Good, because I'm planning to keep you forever." Forever's a long time. Not nearly long enough. Marco appeared with Aria on his shoulders, making her shriek with laughter. Luca followed with Ezra in his arms, the toddler already half asleep against his shoulder. This was my pack. My family, my home, built on a foundation of trust and patience and 3 alphas who'd answered when I called. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that I would call them 1,000 more times. Because that's what love is. Knowing you can reach out in your darkest moment and someone will answer. Every single time. Thank you for joining Jasper Cole's journey from terrified Omega in crisis to bonded mate and father. If this story of emergency heat, fated mates, and finding family in unexpected places touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe for more BL Omegaverse stories. Drop a comment telling me which alpha was your favorite, Dante, Luca, or Marco. Until next time, remember, sometimes the scariest moments lead to the most beautiful beginnings, and the right people will always answer when you call.